Tere hommikut! Mul on hea meel näha nii palju huvilisi meie Riigikogu saalis. Austatud EFSA peadirektor Bernhard Urliga ja ta kolleegid, head ministeeriumi inimesed, head külalised. Meil on täna hea võimalus Euroopa Toiduohutusameti delegatsiooniga kohtuda, kuulata nende ettekandeid ja esitada küsimusi. Kindlasti on paljude meie hulgas tekkinud teatud teemadel eriarvamusi ja küsimusi ja ma usun, et ei ole paremat momenti kui täna, kui on meie presiidiumi laua taga kõik olulised EFSA juhtfiguurid, et nende käest otse küsida, sest eks meil kõigil tekib küsimus, et miks on tehtud erinevad otsused just sellised, nagu nad tehtud on ja miks on just ekspertideks kutsutud need persoonid, kes sel hetkel nende otsuste juures on olnud. Et ma usun, et täna on hea võimalus arutleda ja oma ettepanekuid teha, et nii nagu minagi siin vaikselt arvan, et igas otsuste juures võiks olla ka riigist vähemalt üks esindaja, et me teaks täpselt, kuidas see otsus tuli ja ei tekiks pärast vaidlusi ja eriarusaamisi. Aga ma läheks siis tänase päeva juurde ja kõigepealt annaks sõna EFSA peadirektori Bernhard Urligale, kes räägiks siis EFSA tegevusest ja strateegiast. Please, your...
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation, and welcome to this meeting, to this afternoon. For us, it's really both a pleasure and an honor to be here in the Estonian Parliament. That's not that usual that we are in the parliaments of member states. Usually we are invited by the European Parliament and have our discussions there, not always the easiest ones when it's about genetically modified organisms or pesticides or nanotechnology or novel food. And we are extremely happy to be now in a national parliament. And I would be very happy if we would have a discussion then and not only just presentations by EFSA. My name is Bernhard Urliga. I'm a veterinarian by training, and now I'm with EFSA now for 5 years. And now for 3 years, I think, I'm the executive director of EFSA. And what I would like to do is to introduce EFSA to you, also to make appetite for EFSA, because we need the support of the member states and we need the support of the legislators in the member states. And I will try to outline why this is important. So we have put together a presentation, what is EFSA. And what you see here, EFSA, the European Food Safety Authority, is part of a much bigger family of agencies across Europe. The European legislators have decided to outsource parts of their work, of tasks to specialized agencies that are spread all over Europe. At the moment, we are 45 different agencies, and it's called also joint undertakings, that are spread in the European member states. Most of the member states, not all, most of the member states have an agency. And what you see here on the picture is we have agencies that are topic-wise close to us. The European Medicines Agency in London, in the UK, EMA, the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control in Stockholm, in Sweden, ECDC, European Chemicals Agency in Helsinki, and the European Food Safety Authority, it's called authority, not agency, in Parma, in Italy. So we have our headquarters in Parma, in Italy, between the cities of Bologna and Milano. It's a wonderful place, and we are there since 2005. One agency I think is missing here on this slide, which is also very close to us, is the European Environment Agency in Copenhagen. So we together, we built something like you could call them the agencies working on the One Health approach. Medicines, infectious diseases, chemicals, environment, food. And we report also to the same committee in the European Parliament, the ENVI committee, the Health and Environment Committee of the European Parliament. You see here the skyline of Parma, and on the left side, the new building of EFSA. So we are all together now in one building, about 450 people, in the heart of Parma, a city with about 180,000 inhabitants, and most famously known for the Parma ham and the Parmigiano, the cheese, and for good food and high quality of life. What EFSA is, what our role is, and I think this is important to separate this from other roles in the food safety domain. EFSA is the reference body for risk assessment in the food and feed chain. And that's very important, that this is not risk management. So what we do is a scientific work. It's risk assessment. What we are not going to do is take policy decisions. We don't authorize anything. We do not authorize GMOs or pesticides. We provide the European risk managers with the up-to-date scientific advice on which they can base then decisions whether to authorize, let's say, glyphosate or not. Or in the case of glyphosate, it's a reauthorization because it's already on the market. And we are part of a complex, I would say, a complex system of bodies that are responsible for food safety in Europe. But our task, and this is a consequence of the BSE crisis, of the mad cow disease, where, especially in the United Kingdom, you had to realize that if science is together with policy making, that's risky, because the scientists could be under the pressure of policymakers. And this was the case. I think that should not be hidden. It was the case that UK science was under pressure because of trade implications in the case of BSE. And then after this huge crisis, the breakdown of trust in the European food safety system, Europe decided to do it differently. And Europe came out in 2002 with the Regulation 178, the General Food Law, with a new paradigm, a new principle how food safety should be ensured in Europe. And one part of this food safety system was the newly created EFSA. By saying, let's separate risk assessment from policy making, and let's even put it outside Brussels. So even geographically, it was put outside Brussels to have science that is as least as possible influenced by policy making. As a starting point for management decisions, where then on the management level, in a parliament, in a ministry, obviously you take additional elements into consideration besides science. Economic growth, competition, ethical considerations, even religious considerations can come in when you make decisions. The acceptable level of risk is a policy decision, it's not a science decision. Society has to decide whether we want to accept the risk of engineered nanomaterials. That's not a scientific question, and this is why it is so important to separate the two. So what we do is quite easy, it's straightforward. We provide independent scientific advice and support for the EU risk managers. We provide also risk communication. Barbara will talk about that later. So we have a specific legal task to provide risk communication. It's not just something we find nice. It's a legal obligation we have to communicate about risks, and we promote scientific collaboration and cooperation. And that is also why we are here, not only to explain and to discuss with you what maybe we do right, maybe we do wrong, but also how could we collaborate better? How can we use the data and the brains of the member states, the scientists you have, the researchers, the expertise? What we not do, and that's also important, we do not develop food safety policies and legislation. That's part of the Parliament's task and the Commission, and obviously in the Member States. We do not adopt regulations, and we do not authorize new products. We are supporting the authorization process with a pre-market safety assessment. And we are also not enforcing legislation. We don't have inspectors. We don't have laboratories. We do not take samples and then analyze and then make conclusions. We use information that is produced by the scientific community, the academic community, worldwide, globally, and we use information, Guillaume will come back to this, when we authorize products, when we do the pre-market safety assessment before authorization, we use data from industry. And that's a very contentious point at the moment, and we could come back maybe in the discussion that citizens say, but how can you use data from industry? How can you trust industry? Because they have an interest. They want to authorize something, and there's the insinuation behind this argument, and obviously industry is cheating. I mean, can we work under the assumption that obviously industry is cheating? If we start to work under this assumption, we have a big problem, because then we have to change the system dramatically, because it relies on industry studies that the applicants bring to the regulators, and the regulators assess these studies. It's exactly the same with pharmaceuticals. So could be an interesting point of discussion, who is producing the data for safety assessments. And here you see the three domains of what is called the risk analysis paradigm, with the three pillars of risk assessment, risk management, and risk communication. And Europe has gone very far in separating risk assessment and risk management, I would say, ruthlessly, strictly. It's completely different in the United States. In the US, you have the US FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and they have both risk assessment and they do risk management. They do inspections. They go to the harbors when food is imported into the United States. So Europe has decided differently after BSE. They've said, no, let's separate this. And personally, I think it was a very smart decision by the Parliament and the Council, but there's an interface between risk management and risk assessment. And this interface still can be improved in Europe. And you see here, risk communication is a task that both have to do, the risk managers and the risk assessors. So we have to collaborate closely with our colleagues in risk management when we communicate about GMOs or pesticides or novel food. And you see here, what we try to highlight here is that the difference between hazard and risk. And we in EFSA, we do risk assessment. So it's not only the characteristic of a chemical or a microorganism that is a hazard with the potential to harm human health. It's also about the likelihood and the size of the impact, which is the risk. So there can be a hazard, a toxic chemical, for example, but if the likelihood that we ingest it and the dose with which we ingest it is so low, even this hazard does not materialize as a risk that would be unacceptable for human health. This is the case, for example, for all pesticides. They are chemicals, they have toxic abilities, or they are toxical compounds, but if we do a proper risk assessment, the consumption patterns of the population, so how much are we eating of the different foodstuffs, and we combine this with the residues, then we can do a risk assessment and come to the conclusion that the risk is acceptable. EFSA is working what we call from farm to fork. So from plant health, plant protection, genetically modified organisms, animal feed, animal health and welfare is an important area of working also. Biological hazards like bacteria, viruses, parasites, chemical contaminants like dioxins or mycotoxins or I mean, there's a whole array of chemical contaminants. Then we work on food additives, colorants, and we work on food packaging materials, and we also work on human nutrition. They are also with a special focus on dietary reference values, but also on health claims. So when the companies claim a certain effect of a food, is this substantiated by scientific evidence? EFSA at a glance, we are about 450 people, so it's not a big organization, but we work with more than 1,500 experts. That is one of the specificities of EFSA, that we don't hire all these people. They are not employed by EFSA, but we mobilize them. We ask them to volunteer in calls that we do every 3 years. Every 3 years we refill our scientific panels, and we try to attract the brightest people in Europe that work as volunteers, as experts in one of our 10 panels. That is also a very smart characteristic of the European system, that we can go and look for the people that we need. When we work, for example, on insects in food and feed, we go and look where are the European experts for insects in feed and food, and then we collect them in a working group, they work with us, and then after 1 year or so, this working group has done its work, it's abundant, and the people are still employed in a research institute or a university institute in the member states. But this system is also a delicate system. It depends on the readiness of the member state organizations to borrow us their experts. And this is not 2 days a year, it can be up to 50 days a year. It's quite a lot, 50 days of a working year. And what we hear now in the time of economic difficulties, that member state organizations tell us, yeah, it's nice that our people work for EFSA and for the European project, but we have budget cuts, we need them at home. And if we are not able to attract the best experts in Europe, we have a problem with our European agenda. So this is so important, why we need your support also, the support of the policymakers in the member states to say, yeah, well, actually, we want to support the European project. It's not about EFSA, it's about the European project of food safety. But if we want to support it, we have to ask our universities, our research institutes, our risk assessment institutes to supply EFSA with the expertise EFSA needs. That's a bit of a tricky issue for us because we don't pay these people properly and we don't pay the employers that pay the salary of these people. So it's a contribution of the member states to the European project. And if this contribution is kind of drying out, there will be no EFSA scientific advice in the future. We are also a big meeting organizer. We bring about 12,000 expert days every year to Parma in about 1,000 meetings, trying to bring more and more of these meetings in a virtual environment with video and teleconference meetings, but not everything can be done virtually. And we produce about 500 scientific outputs every year. We call our products scientific outputs. And this can be huge works of 700 pages, and this can be rather pragmatic works when we categorize plant pests in big numbers. Then we don't go into this level of detail as we did, for example, on bisphenol A. So we have a quite stable production of about 500 scientific outputs per year. How do we work? First, a word about our values. We have looked at what is actually the driving force for us. What gives us the energy to do the job every day? And we came up with 5 values. It's scientific excellence. So we want to do good science. It's the basis for everything. If our science is not of high quality, we can go home and forget everything. It's like a bad product. If you buy a bad product, you will not be happy. It's about innovation. It's one of our values. Could be surprising for you. How can innovation be a value? But we really need more innovation in food safety assessment because industry is innovating like hell. They are bringing new products, new processes, synthetic biology, engineered nanomaterials, and now with the next generation of plant breeding technologies, CRISPR-Cas. There are so many technologies brought forward, and we are kind of running behind with our risk assessment methodologies to assess the impacts and the safety risks of new technologies. So we need more innovation. We need, because of this need for more innovation, more collaboration. This can only be done basically at a global level. Not even Europe is enough for that. We have to do methodology development on a global level. It's a bit bizarre, no, that we trade goods globally, and with global trade of goods, we also trade hazards and risks globally, obviously. We import the risks of the countries that do the export, but we still have a very fragmented, sometimes even national approach to risk assessment. That does not make sense. It's a plan to fail. And then we say, yeah, but then we do more border inspection control. Yeah, but it's a plan to fail. We should not do more border inspection control. We should try to bring China on the same level of food safety as we have. Otherwise, it's just a question of time until we detect things we would not like to have in our food, and we have experience on that. Another value is independence. It's a very tricky one, because the question is, how independent can science be today? How independent are the scientists at the universities, at the research institutes? Because they are all forced to work with industry money. It's European research policy, Horizon 2020, means you need an industry partner. It's private-public partnership. That's the fashion of the year and of the years to come. So we drive researchers into private-public partnerships for more innovative Europe, more competitive Europe. That's fine. But when the same researchers come to our door, EFSA's door, we say, hey, you're not independent enough. You did research with industry money. We cannot work with you. Well, that's a bit strange, no? Because either Europe goes that way, so we have an extremely stringent system of safeguarding our independence, and we exclude a lot of expertise, a lot of brains we don't work with because we think they are too close to industry. But this also means that we miss a lot of brains, which we cannot work with. And to find the right balance here between scientific excellence, to get the best people, and by the way, industry also wants to work with the best people, obviously. So there's a competition for the best people. We would like to attract them. On the other hand, we say we have to be very strict on independence. And this is why it is a value of EFSA. And linked to independence is our value of openness. And openness means for us two things: transparency, which means we open the curtain and the people can see what we do, how we do, which data we use, which people we use. But for us, openness goes a step further. It's also engagement. We are not only opening the curtain, we open the door and say, come in, and maybe even work with us. Can we do partly a co-production of science by using other scientists that usually don't work with EFSA in the academic crowd, or maybe even in the big crowd? So there we try to use openness also to showcase how independent we are and how we came to our conclusions, to make our conclusions scrutinizable, that everybody can say, oh, I don't trust EFSA really, I want to know. So they should have the data, the methods to do that. And in the most positive case, to reproduce our science. We want to make our science reproducible. And that's a big challenge for us. I will not enter into that. Just to highlight to you who can task EFSA. We get our work mostly from the European Commission, from DG Santé. About 90% of the questions come from the European risk managers, but also the European Parliament can task us, and the member states can task us. Member states can give mandates to EFSA. And this happens frequently, but it's not the most important source of our work. And then we can do what you see on the right side, self-mandate. That's also important for us. If nobody asks questions we think which are relevant, we work on our own, mostly on emerging and innovative questions that we think will be relevant in the future. And for risk assessments, we use essentially 3 ingredients: data, methods, and expertise. So we need evidence, we need data, we need methodologies with which we look at this data, and then we need people, brains, in the future maybe more and more artificial intelligence that looks at this data and comes up with an assessment, with an evaluation, and with conclusions. Our scientific expertise is organized in 3 different levels. We have our staff, the 450 people. We have the scientific panels, you have seen them, the 10 panels of EFSA, and we have one overarching scientific committee that looks for harmonized working procedures between the different panels. Here you see our scientific panels in a different way, and in the center, the scientific committee covering the food chain from farm to fork. And we also sometimes have to work under urgent conditions when something happens, and you see here from melamine in food, via dioxins, then we had animal diseases, the Schmallenberg virus in 2012, the African swine fever that you are very well aware of, lumpy skin disease, avian influenza. So they're often in context with plant diseases or animal diseases, we also have to work quickly to give something to the risk managers to take fast decisions. Our independence, I mentioned, is a value. We have a value of independence, and means we should be independent from the risk managers, the Commission, the member states. We should not be influenced by politics, but also obviously from private interests, industry. And I told you with industry, it's a delicate balance, because industry also works with scientists, and they have a lot of scientists, they have a lot of know-how, and how can we use the know-how and still stay independent? And for this we have, I would say, quite a sophisticated independence policy, how we organize the process, how we select people to safeguard our independence. Who are our partners? They are, on the one hand, individual experts, the 1,500. The national food safety organizations are very important partners for us, but also international organizations like WHO, FAO, the European Plant Protection Organization, and research institutes and academia. The future, yes, the context of our work is changing. There is a growing, I would say, a growing expectation of the society for transparency and engagement. People want to know, how did you come to this conclusion? The trust of people into institutions in Europe, maybe not in Estonia, is going down. People have the feeling, also now because of new technologies, because of having the knowledge at your hand with smartphones, we see that people say, I don't trust institutions, I don't trust Europe, so I don't trust European institutions. And often even now, also because of things happening on the other side of the big ocean, people say, I don't trust experts and science. And if I don't like the facts, I create new facts, alternative facts. That is very dangerous for science. So we can react only by being more open, more transparent, and more inclusive with the society, to tell society, look, what we do, how we do, and do it together with us. Then we have new hazards and risks: climate change, globalization, migration, new technologies bring new hazards and new risks. We have to deal with that. We have an exponential growth of scientific knowledge, which is a big opportunity, but it's also a big challenge. How to get hold of this knowledge, how to digest this knowledge. We have the impact of globalization, as mentioned. And it's also about, will we be able to attract all the expertise that we need in the future? Because of these many reasons. We don't pay them properly, the difficult situation in the member states, our independence policy. Also, the location in Parma does not help us for that. because there's no international airport, and it's a wonderful place to live, but for experts to come to work, it's maybe not the best choice in Europe. And you see here just a few examples of new challenges, be it bee health, all the environmental stresses that impact the survival of beehives. You see here nanotechnology. You see antimicrobial resistance as one of the biggest public health threats we have. Antimicrobial resistance. We have novel foods. We talk about chemical mixtures now. It's not only one pesticide, because we don't eat the residue of one pesticide. We eat the residue of 10 or 20 pesticides at the same time. And how do they interact? How are these chemical mixtures behaving in our body? And how can we assess the combined effect of chemical mixtures in terms of toxicological impact? Yes, that's our people, EFSA staff, a happy family. And with this notion of a happy family in Parma, trying to support food safety and ensure food safety in Europe, I would like to stop. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to discuss with you how we can do our job better. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kas on Bernhardile küsimusi? Et kui on küsimusi, siis mikrofonid on meil kahel pool olemas. Kasutage täna seda võimalust, homme seda jälle ei ole. Et iga aasta ei ole meil võimalust, et EFSA delegatsioon koos eesotsas peadirektoriga meile külla tuleb. Et kui kellelgi on ettekande kohta mida küsida, jah, ole hea. Keegi tõstis käe. Tule veel tuuakse sulle mikrofon sinna.
Einar Eiland, Elukeskkonna ja Rahvastiku Arengu Selts. Et ma küsiksin niiviisi, et mujal maailmas on väga, me peaksime ikka vaatama seda toidujulgeolekut nagu tarneahela põhiselt, eks ole. Et mujal maailmas on see ka NATO julgeoleku riskide väga, kuidas öelda, maandamine väga lähedalt seotud ka kuidas öelda, toidujulgeolekuga ja nii edasi, mis läheb oma ette juba geneetikasse välja, eks ole, geneetiline julgeolek ja nii edasi. Et kas me ei peaks seda valgustama ka põhjalikumalt näitena liikmesriikides siis neid ohte ja nii edasi. Et miks ma seda küsin, et kui mul oli viimane kohtumine siin näitena ülikooliga, siis tegelikult ehitusinsenerid, kes peaksid tagama tegelikult toiduohutuse, kui me ütleme nendele näitena sõna clean rooms, siis nad tegid mulle suured silmad, eks ole, ja küsisid, mis asi see on. Aga teatavasti ilma selle clean roomsi nagu, kuidas öelda, ekspertiisita ja teadmiseta, eks ole, ei ole meil võimalik lihtsalt seda toiduohutust tagada. Et kas me ei peaks nagu neid liikmesriike siis kuidagimoodi selle kompetentsiga kuidagimoodi järgi aitama? Aitäh!
Aitäh!
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think that the elements of food, I would call it food security, so that we have enough to eat and that also in the light of a global population of maybe 10 billion in a few decades, food security is becoming and is already a main topic of how can we have enough food to eat, and in food security is biodiversity. How can we make sure that the biodiversity is not shrinking below a level that will not allow us to produce the food in the future. So we have food security, we have food safety, and then in the developed world we have also in between the problem of food waste, where we know that we throw away up to 30% of the food that is produced. And I fully agree with you. Also, you came more from a security perspective, I think, that we have to integrate food safety, food security, food waste, biodiversity in a systemic approach much more closer than we do today. But I think this is one of the big challenges even of science, that we drill scientifically into the depth of single genes or even down below genes, producing more and more specialized knowledge, but what we really miss is this integration of knowledge into something that is of use for the societies. So this integrative part, bringing different fields together, I think you're completely right, has to be strengthened much more also in Europe.
Thank you. Kas on veel? Ja palun.
Aitäh. Aleksei Lõtman Eestimaa Looduse Fondist. Ma vist küsimuse esitaks inglise keeles, kui tohib. The question is based on one specific very high-profile case with EFSA and German evaluators, that is case of glyphosate. So I probably will partly hold part of my questions to the second panel, if that seems to be appropriate, because we will hear something about that. But based on this case and coming back to your presentation, risk versus hazard, there is a bit of risk in this approach because this is a bit like American approach to weapons. As long as you don't point it at anyone and shoot, risk can be considered negligible. So when we are dealing with hazardous chemicals, dismissing risks because of assumptions about small risks in case of proper use, so to speak, proper use, can actually misfire and give us a wrong picture of the risks. And second related question, also largely stemming from the case of glyphosate, but on a more general note. As you also stressed, you don't have your own labs, you rely on industry data, but there is, as we all know, still this issue of industry data, how independent is it? And you have very high demand of the so-called good laboratory practice that is totally appropriate indeed for industrial labs, but tends to exclude creative new science. And new independent scientific papers are often excluded from your evaluations because they don't conform to this very narrow definition of good laboratory practice. So isn't it still time? I understand that the question is that you don't have money for that, but imagine that you would. For EFSA to start commissioning new studies in case of contentious products, like in this case glyphosate. But there are others, of course. So it's a question not about glyphosate as such, but shouldn't we move towards the time when EFSA would start commissioning from universities in case there is doubt and industry studies point in one direction and some other evaluations point in different directions, that you would commission your own studies? Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. This would give stuff for at least 2 workshops of 4 hours. Your questions, very relevant questions. I think with hazard and risks, that's a question for the legislator. As you know, in the pesticides legislation, if a substance, for example, has endocrine disrupting properties, it's a cut-off criterion. We don't look at risks anymore. It's a hazard-based criterion. And this has to be decided by society. It's not up to science. If the society thinks that the hazard should not be exposed, there should be 0 exposure, okay, can be done on a legislative basis. We as scientists, we implement law. We have to implement legislation, and glyphosate is not on the list that there's a hazard-based approach. So with glyphosate, we do, first of all, a classification, whether it's carcinogenic or not, or other properties, and then we do a risk assessment. And the outcome of EFSA's risk assessment, and this was confirmed by the Chemicals Agency and by other agencies, is if you use it properly, the risk is acceptable. From a human health and environmental health point of view. If you want to have it politically, if you want to use agrochemicals in agriculture or not, the way we produce food in Europe is a completely different question. It's not a scientific question. So there I think policy has to come in and say, we want to have, for example, only organic farming in Europe. Yeah, you can do that, but that has consequences in many aspects, as we all know. So that's a society decision that has to be negotiated in the political arena and not on the scientific level. And what we feel sometimes is that science is a scapegoat for a discussion that should be dealt with on a political level. For your second argument that we exclude non-GLP conform studies is not reality. We do not exclude non-GLP studies. If industry performs studies, they have to do it according to GLP, because we want to see the raw data. If academia does studies, it's almost never GLP. But if it's good science, obviously we include it. And for glyphosate, we have included many non-industry studies if they are good science. Because the discriminator is not GLP or not GLP, the discriminator is quality of science, quality of the evidence, designing of the studies, statistical power, reporting. So we will find in the glyphosate dossier, which about 6,000 pages are online on EFSA's website, you will find many studies that were not commissioned by industry, and it's good science. To your last point, whether we should commission our own studies, I think that's a possibility. But the European Parliament has decided that if you, as a company, want to authorize, you want to market a product in Europe, you, company, have to provide the data that allows the regulators to assess the safety. So you, company, have to invest into the production of data that allows regulators like the Medicines Agency or EFSA to do a safety assessment. So it's on the shoulders of the company to produce this data. Now you could see it differently. You could say this should be commissioned by the society. But then you could say, why should the taxpayer pay these studies? There are ideas to say, why couldn't industry pay into a pool of money? But they do not commission the studies. An independent organization takes this pool of money and commissions the studies. That could be a way forward, but it's extremely complex. I think we get about 20,000 studies a year. We're not talking about 5 studies, and EFSA would repeat one study. On glyphosate, we have about 700 studies in our dossier, 700. So you see, it's not a black and white that you could say, EFSA, you do one study and then the world is different. But the idea, how could we inject trust into this system? I think this idea is very valid, and we are the first ones as EFSA to have the most trusted, the most open, the most transparent science. We would love to publish all this data, but there's also intellectual property rights. And we have to find the right balance between the two.
Aitäh, Reinhold. Ma arvan, et vastustega jäeti rahule. Ma ei kuulnud, et oleks jalgu trampima hakatud. Et ma tahan tänada Bernhard siin väga hea ettekande eest, sisuka, ja ma arvan, et paljud said oma küsimustele vastuse, sellepärast, kas on veel küsimusi? Muidugi, jah, et aga hästi lühike küsimus, paluks.
On Eesti Põllumajandus-Kaubanduskoda, et ma esindan nii põllumajandustootjaid kui toiduainetööstuse ettevõtteid. Ja minu küsimus on seotud sellega, et te väitsite, et eksperdid peavad olema täiesti erapooletud. Väikeriigis nagu Eesti on paraku ettevõtjad ja teadlased väga tihedalt omavahel seotud. Kas see tähendab seda, et Eesti teadlastel sel juhul puudub võimalus osaleda eksperdina EFSA paneelidel? Aitäh.
I hope this is not the case, and we are not aiming at big or small countries. We have independency rules for everybody. And in these independency rules, we have very clear criteria about being member of a management board of an industry, of a scientific advisory board, or doing consultancy for industry, getting research money. And all these different aspects are assessed, and then we decide whether you can be member of a working party or not. And for example, for university researchers that get industry research money, we say that not more than 25% of the whole research money that a researcher has under his or her control, not more than 25% should come from private industry. Is this the right number? Is it too high, too low? You can discuss, but we have taken this approach. And I personally would very much invite Estonian experts to apply for EFSA and to work with EFSA. We really would need the brightest brains of Europe.
Thank you, Mr. Bernhard. Ja mul on hea meel anda järgmiseks ettekandeks sõna EFSA riskide hindamise ja teadusabi valitsuse juhatajale Hans Verbegenile, et rääkida ka Eestis väga olulistel teemadel sigade Aafrika katk ja mesilaste tervis. Okei, et ettekandjad soovivad vahetust teha, ega ju meil selle vastu midagi ei ole, et ma annaks sõna siis EFSA reguleeritud toodete teadusliku hindamise talituse juhatajale Kulherm de Saisile, et rääkida siis EFSA tegevuse reguleeritud toodete valdkonnas ehk siis pestitsiidide toimeainete hindamise protsessist ja tervisealaseid väiteid probiootiliste bakteriga rikastatud toidu kohta. Please, your floor.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Guillaume de Sez. I'm the head of the regulated product department in EFSA. It's one of the two scientific departments, and my colleague Hans Verhagen will talk about the second department after me. I've been about 1 year in EFSA, and I have background with the European Chemicals Agency, where I was before. So today I will talk about the regulated products and more in particular about 4 points. One, very generally, how do we produce scientific opinion in EFSA? So this is applicable to the regulated product, but to any kind of scientific question we receive in EFSA. And then I will go more in particular on 3 topics, the pesticides, the GMO, and a nutritional topic, the health claims. And I have 15 minutes, which means about 3-4 minutes each. So get ready. I'm getting started. Yes, so Bernhard showed you already part of this, so that's helping me. This is where do we get our questions from? So mostly from the external, mostly from the European Commission, but also member states. So this is where everything starts when we about producing a scientific opinion. First is receiving a question, and that's where they come from. As soon as we have received a question to EFSA, there is a negotiation with the requester to produce a mandate which clarifies the background and which clarifies really the expectation in terms of outcome. This mandate is published on our website. Once we have this, also something Bernhard presented to you is the 10 panels of EFSA. So the question will fall within the remit of one of these 10 panels. And so the first thing to do is to select what is the competent panel. Sometimes, most of the time, it's fairly obvious. Sometimes there are topics which fall in between panels because they have sometimes also a little bit of overlapping responsibilities. Once we have a panel, then the next step is to select a working group which will deal specifically with the question at hand. And I will come back on working groups. And finally, the next step to finalize the establishment of a task to get ready for the assessment is to do the assessment of the expert's potential conflict of interest. Each expert with whom we work has a declaration of interest, which we assess generally and also specifically in relation to the specific question which is being asked. And as Bernhard was mentioning in the previous question, the assessment is done with very clear objective criteria that have been decided in advance to know if a given expert can participate in a working group about a given question. So yeah, this is about to put a little bit of numbers on the questions EFSA receives. So EFSA receives and answers about 500 questions per year. The vast majority of these come from external customers, external requesters, European Commission we mentioned being the big one. And also within these external questions, you see that the blue part is the one coming from application, industry application. So a company who wants to put a product on the market, pre-marketing authorization. That's the vast majority of the work in terms of number of opinion which comes out of EFSA. And the second point to clarify a little bit is I mentioned establishing a working group to deal with a question that comes to EFSA. Well, you see, Bernhard had mentioned already, we work with a network of 1,500 experts throughout Europe and sometimes even beyond, coming mostly from academia, national authorities or research institutes. And they work in working groups. We have 35 what we call standing working groups, meaning they work on recurring questions or horizontal aspect of risk assessment, for which their support will be needed across different panels. And we have, on average, about 50 ad hoc working groups, which are created to answer specific questions. So that first step is to receive the task and get ready for the assessment, and then we go into the assessment, and this is what I have here. And that's where also we talked a bit before in Bernhard's presentation about the split of the work between the staff of EFSA, the working group, and the panel. So the work on the question starts with the staff of EFSA, which does all the preliminary work of getting data, getting external help if needed, procurements, grants to help produce technical reports to help answer the questions, and bringing all those elements together that will be useful to draft the preliminary opinion, which is the work of the working group. So the working group meets a number of times and come up to a draft opinion, which in the end they give to the panel. And at the end, the panel meets in a plenary session and they review the draft opinion which has been passed on to them by the working group. They finalize it and they adopt it. And that's very important to understand this. They adopt it, meaning that when a question comes to EFSA, the answer comes from one of EFSA's panel, not from EFSA staff. It's really adopted by the EFSA panel, which is made of those independent experts, which are not EFSA staff, which are recruited from throughout the EU, from different institutions. And they have the responsibility of the scientific opinion and the independence even from EFSA and the staff of EFSA. Together with this, we have a public consultation on this opinion, and then the opinion is finalized fully and passed on to the requester. So in the case of, for instance, the Commission, it goes to the Commission, who then, with this assessment, uses it in their risk management decision. So that goes, for instance, to the committee, the Plant, Animal, Food and Feed Committee, which takes this scientific opinion as the basis for their discussion, as the basis to decide whether to authorize, whether to ban, or whether to put some specific condition on an authorization. But then that's, at this stage, it's fully outside of EFSA's remit. Okay, so the last thing we do about a scientific question, which is then fully in-house EFSA staff, is communication. So defining the message and using different channels depending on what the opinion was about, what was the impact of the opinion, the level of previous work, the level of demand by the public. The channels are chosen accordingly. And we publish on the EFSA website on one hand, and also in the EFSA journal, which is on the model of scientific journals to help make our scientific opinions more accessible by the scientific community. Every single scientific opinion of EFSA is published on the EFSA website and on the EFSA journal. Okay. So this is, in a nutshell, how we answer scientific questions in EFSA. And this is the model applicable to all panels, except one, which works a little bit differently. Principle is overall the same, but there are some differences. And that's the pesticides panel, plant protection products. And I will cover this now in 3 slides, so also fairly fast. So an application to put a pesticide on the market starts with a company who has, or a group of companies who have an interest in a specific active substance, so the active principle into a product, and they want to put this on the market or to keep it on the market if it's already there. They prepare their dossier, which goes to one member state, called a rapporteur member state, who is designated to start the work on this application. The expert from this particular member state prepare all the work, do an assessment of the application, and prepare an assessment report, which they pass on to EFSA, where EFSA organizes a peer review process. So EFSA is coordinating the review of this assessment, which is done by the 28 member states plus Norway and Iceland. So the comments are received from every single member state who wants to make comments. Comments are discussed. And EFSA, with all those comments, produces a conclusion taking into account all the opinions that have been expressed by the different member states. In the process, there is also, at some point, the possibility for the applicant to make comments onto the preliminary assessment which has been done, and there is also public consultations foreseen in the process. When all of this is done, EFSA produces its conclusions, which then are passed on to the risk manager. So that's when it leaves EFSA, it goes to the PAF, so the Plant, Animal, Food and Feed Committee, which uses this scientific assessment as the basis for taking the decision they have to take. And so in the case of plant protection products, there is a next step. If the decision of the committee has been positive to authorize the active substance, then the companies are authorized to make application for the product. So the active substance now mixed with all other chemicals that will give it its properties, the intended properties to make it a plant protection product. And then they go not back to EFSA, but they go to individual member states to ask authorization to put the full product on their market. And that's because when it comes to the full product, then you get very close to how it will be used in very specific condition of each different member states, and that's why this step is with the member states, because yeah, the type of use, the type of agriculture practices, type of use, type of climate, type of terrain is different throughout Europe, obviously. Estonia is not the same as Sicily. And here, well, it's outside of EFSA, just a word here, an applicant will come to a member state, and a member state within a zone, a geographical zone. There are 3 zones in the EU. Within the geographical zone, one member state will do the assessment, and there is a principle of mutual recognition within a zone with the other member states. But this is fully outside of EFSA at this point. Okay, so yes, so a few points to emphasize is first that this is, I hope I have described it in this way, a solid and comprehensive system. Altogether, the number of experts available to participate in the review is in the range of 600 experts. If we combine all the member states' pesticide experts who participate who are available to participate in the peer review. And of course, there is a full discussion at the level of 28 plus 2 member states, meaning that every member state can be heard, is heard, and opinion is taken into account in the final conclusion that goes to the European Commission. A point about data. So we talked a bit before about mandatory data, which is produced by industry, following strict guidelines, typically OECD guidelines, according to good laboratory practices. So that's one part of the data which is required from the applicant. Another requirement on the applicant is to screen and take into account all publicly available literature published in the last 10 years. So all this literature is also being reviewed, whether GLP or not. And of course, as I mentioned, there is a public consultation, at which point anything that would have been missed can be brought in to the process for consideration by the public. Yes. And assessment of one representative use at the level of the active substance, which to give an idea of the real uses, but this is just a starting point because the real uses and all the complexity of the uses will be seen at the time when an application is made for the full plant protection product. So EFSA conclusion comprise a number of things. So a full assessment of the hazard of the properties, physico-chemical hazard, toxicological hazard, a full assessment of these what we call the endpoints, so each hazardous properties. It's also covering different type of uses. Where will the exposure happen to the workers producing the substances, but also using it, the farmers, or the general population who will be around at the time of use. And there are also elements of environmental risk assessment in the EFSA conclusion. And then, as I mentioned, it's a transparent process because there is points for public consultation, and there is full publication of virtually all the non-confidential documents in the process, which includes big parts of the dossiers, minutes of the meeting of the member states when they discuss, and obviously the final conclusion of EFSA. All of these, several thousands of pages for each case, available on EFSA website. One last point about pesticide is the residues. So what I talked about now was the pre-marketing safety assessment. For pesticide, there is also a post-marketing assessment of how much of those active substances will be found in the food we eat in Europe. So every year, each member state gather a number of food samples and performed analysis of different pesticide residues, and all these data points, I think it's 75,000 samples per year, are collected by EFSA, who analyzes the whole thing and produces a report every year on the level of overall safety that we have in terms of pesticide residue present in our food. So also obviously fully available every year. Last year, the conclusion was 97% of the sample were showing no sign or traces of residue below the maximum residue levels which had been determined as being safe in the safety assessment. Okay, so moving to GMO. So here that was pesticide, a little bit different from what I presented about how scientific opinions are made in EFSA. GMO is back to the regular process which I presented. So in GMO, the main activities are application for placing on the market a substance, a product, a plant related to GMO. That's one of the big parts of the work. Other part is to produce guidance on how to assess the safety of GMO. And we also have several requests from the European Commission, specific mandates, typically when a question comes about a product which is already on the market, a new study has been published, and the European Commission wants to evaluate whether that has an impact on the authorization that has been given. And last, we have also recurring task of, for instance, every year assessing the post-marketing environmental monitoring, where we do the environmental assessment of GMO that have been authorized for the cultivation. The GMO legislation, what falls under the scope of the GMO regulation is any type of food and feed which is in itself a GM organism, or which contain a GM organism, or which is produced by an organism that has been genetically modified. So typically, well, an example we see very often is genetically modified bacteria producing enzymes that are used then in food production. So that's consumption, and then there is deliberate release into the environment. So when a GM material is imported and processed in the EU, or when GM plants are being cultivated in the EU. So that's the remit, the scope of the question on which EFSA is asked to produce a scientific opinion. So the workflow, how we produce a scientific opinion, this is very much like what I presented earlier. The only thing is the yellow box on the right, which in the GMO application process, there is a very thorough involvement of all member states which are systematically consulted. And here it's a little bit about the life cycle of an authorization for a genetically modified organism. So I described already the first branch leading to the first authorization, which typically is done for 10 years.
Esimene autoriseerimine võtab aega umbes 10 aastat. Siis ettevõte saab loa minna turule GMO-ga ja siis seejärel veel turule lubamise järgne keskkonna hindamine. Ja siis iga 10 aasta tagant ka uus hindamine, iga-aastane keskkonna hindamise raport, mida ka hinnatakse ja sellest lähtuvalt otsustatakse, kas luba säilib või mitte. Ja viimane slaid puudutab mulle siis terviseküsimusi ja toitaineid. Ja terviseküsimuste osas saame me 40-50 küsimust mõjudele tervisemõjude osas ja hindame neist umbes 10% teaduslikult. Ehk siis paljudele me vastame ei. EFSA paneel otsustab, et dokumendid, mis esitati, või teaduse argument ei ole piisavalt tugev, et siis taotlusele positiivselt vastata. Ehk siis mõned toiduainete sektorid, näiteks nagu probiootikumid, nendes osas oleme me 1-2 probiootikumi sadade hulgast senimaani välja valinud. Ja siin ma selgitaksin ka, et me hindame probiootikume, aga tavaliselt ei ole piisavalt selget kirjeldust selle koostisaine osas, mida taotlus puudutab, näiteks bakterid ei ole piisavalt kirjeldatud ja selles mõttes me ei saa ka nagu mingisugust tervisesoovitust anda või millele seda autoriseeringut anda. Nii et see on üks asi. Ja teine moment on see, et ei ole piisavalt täpselt kirjeldatud tervisemõju ja ei ole ka siis teaduspõhiseid andmeid selle kohta, kuidas üldist heaolu näiteks mõni toode mõjutab. Teaduslikult on väga raske tõestada, kuidas üldist heaolu positiivselt mõni probiootikum mõjutab. Või siis mõni selline mõju, mida ei saa otseselt nimetada tervise toetamiseks. Näiteks selline asi, et mingi toode toetab kõigisugu taimede kasvamist. Aga kuidas kokku viia siis taime kasvu ja siis otsest mõju, head mõju tervisele. Siin on see teaduslik küsimus selles, et need teadusuuringud, mis sellega seoses esitatakse, ei ole piisavalt siis usaldusväärsed või statistiliselt piisavalt vettpidavad selleks, et teha seda järeldust, et jah, siin on õigustatud siis tervise toetus ja need ju on ka inimtervist mõjutavad ained ja sellised uuringud on väga keerukad, väga rasked, neid on keeruline teha ja siis lõppjärelduste tegemine väga raske ka taotleja vaatevinklist. Seda ma täna tahtsingi öelda ja nüüd lähme edasi teise sessiooniga ja teeme küsimused pärast. On nii?
Yes, thank you. My name is
suur tänu. Mina olen Hans Verhagen, ka mina töötan EFSAs juba 2 aastat või 12 aastat või 11 aastat ja mina olen siis riskihindamise ja teadusabi osakonna juhataja ja minu vastutusalaks on siis hinnata riske mitte reguleeritud toodete osas. Ja ma olen EFSA-ga ka olnud varasemas elus seotud selles mõttes, et ma olen ühes paneelis, EFSA paneelis olnud osaline, kuigi minu ekspertoskused seal on nüüdseks oma pädevuse kaotanud. Aga nüüd siis organisatsioon, EFSA ülesehitus, seda sama struktuuri kuidas EFSA on üles ehitatud, kus need 450 inimest töötavad, kõike saab näha ja siis alumine ruut siin on see riski hindamise osakond. Ja meil on 5 üksust, need on bioloogilised ohutegurid, siin on mikroorganismilised ja bioloogiline vastupidavus ja siis on meil ka osakond või allüksus, mis tegeleb tõendusmaterjalide juhtimisega, siis on meil toetusosakond, kus me meetodeid, metodoloogiaid koostame ja toetame, siis on meil ka teaduskomisjon, sellest juba Bernhard ka rääkis varasemalt, ja meil on 10 siis paneeli ja nende kohal siis töötab üks teaduslik komisjon ja me seal ka hindame siis alles võimalikke tekkivaid riske, millest ma räägin hiljem presentatsioonis rohkem ja siis on meil ka loomade ja taimede tervise osakond, kus me siis tegeleme looma ja taime tervisega ja mul on hea meel, et selline osakond töötab, sellepärast, et see on just see osakond, mis nii-öelda farmist kuni taldrikuni peab tagama turvalise toidu. Ja oma presentatsioonis räägin ma nüüd täpsemalt siis loomatervises. Meil on seal väga palju erinevaid tegevusalasid, aga praegu tahaksin eraldi nimetada sigade Aafrika katku, räägin täpsemalt ka hiljem, siis viimased aastad oleme me palju töötanud ka sellise haigusega nagu naudulaarne dermatiit, mis on Türgi, Bulgaaria, vot selle piirkonna haigus. Ja selle töö põhjal, mida EFSA viimastel aastatel on teinud, me loodame, et me saame selle haiguse kontrolli aske, seal on erinevaid mooduleid koostatud, antud teadusnõu, meil on piisavalt informatsiooni. Ja siis linnugriip, need on ainult mõned näited siis meie töövaldkondadest Euroopas ja ma lühidalt ka tutvustan 2 uut teadusraportit nendel teemadel, mis puudutab Euroopas lahti läinud epideemiaid ja milliseid poliitikameetmeid nendes osas peaks õigeaegselt rakendama. Ja mis puudutab siis linnugrippi, siis selles osas on koostatud mitmeid teadusraporteid, aga me otsustasime, et tuleb paradigmat muuta ja ma loodan, et me suudame ka selles suunas jätkata. Me teeme koostööd paljude eraldiseisvate liikmesriikidega Euroopa Liidus, aga ka väljaspoolt Euroopa Liitu selleks, et koguda andmeid. Ja esimene raport tuleb umbes 2 nädala pärast ja paljud on seal osalenud ka Eesti kaastöölised ja see ei ole mitte olukorra hinnang praegu, vaid see on selline raport, mida me koostame iga 3 kuu kaupa nüüd kuni ülejärgmise aastani ja raportit tutvustatakse Brüsselis nüüd paari nädala pärast samuti CVO kohtumisel ja seal siis ka EFSA omalt poolt annab oma panuse. Teine haigus, mida siin tuleb kindlasti nimetada, mis Eestis on levinud, on siis Aafrika sigade katk, mis puhkes paar aastat tagasi Eestis, Lätis, Leedus, Ukrainas, Valgevenes ja nii edasi. Te ise teate seda teemat kindlasti paremini. Mida EFSA tegi Aafrika sigade katku osas? Me avaldasime paar teaduslikku arvamust 2010, 2014, 2015. 2015 me soovitasime erinevate juhtimisvõimaluste ja parimate praktikate rakendamist metssigade osas, sest metssigu on Eestis palju ja me arutasime neid teemasid mitmeid aastaid. 2015 Parmas me ka andsime soovitada siis harmoneerida sigade Aafrika katku andmete kogumist Balti riikides, Eestis, Lätis, Leedus ja Poolas, et teha epidemioloogilisi analüüse selle viiruse leviku kohta Balti riikides ja Poolas. Ja kõik liikmesriigid on olnud väga hästi kaasatud. Ja palun saage aru, me ei saa teha kõike Parmast. Meil on vaja koostööd kohalikega, andmeid koha pealt, kohalike teadlaste koostööd, et hinnata riske ja et koostada ka teadusraporteid. Seda me oleme teinud siis minevikus, aga ka lähitulevikus on tegevusi ette nähtud, ehk siis üks paneel EFSA-st koos liikmesriikidega kaasatakse tuleviku tegevustest. See 2017. aastal ilmub 2 uut raportit, õieti üks juba ilmus märtsikuus 2017 ja novembris tuleb teine teadusraport. Järgmine on see, et sigade Aafrika katku epidemioloogilist analüüsi tuleb kaasajastada ja juba 2015 arvamus avaldati, aga neid andmeid tuleb viia praeguse hetke tasemele ja siis Euroopa Komisjonil on ka väga suur huvi selle haiguse kontrolli alla saamise osas, sest on väga oluline, et see tõbi siiski saadaks teatud piiridesse. Väga oluline on see, et nii nagu me 2015 juba soovitasime, peaks olema harmoneeritud andmete kogumise mudel Euroopa Liidus. Ma tahan Eestile teha komplimendi. Ma ütlesin kolleegidele, ma pean minema Eestisse rääkima seal sigade katkust ja kolleegid ütlesid mulle, et Eesti on selles mõttes väga suuri edusamme teinud. See on kompliment teile tõesti. Ja EFSA sai oma arvamuse kokku panna ainult tänu sellele, et Eestist tulid väga kvaliteetsed andmed. On näha, et Eesti teeb väga head tööd, te üldse soovite ka jagada oma andmeid. Me tõesti saame neid kasutada selleks, et oma teadusraporteid ja riskihinnanguid kokku panna. Mida me siis selle aasta märtsis tegisime? Nagu ütlesin, koostasime ja avaldasime raporti sigade Aafrika katku osas. Te kindlasti paniste seda tähele, sellepärast et see on ka meie kodulehel avatatud. See on siis epideemia, üsna väikesemahuline, see liigub edasi aeglaselt 2 kilomeetrit kuus, aga haigus päris kadunud ei ole ja siiski seisame sellega silmitsi, seda mõjutavad mitmed tegurid. Ja juba eelmise slaidi peal ma ütlesin, et Eestist on tulnud väga kvaliteetsed andmed ja me teame täpselt, kuidas see on levinud, kui palju sigu on olnud nendes farmides, kus sead hävitati, kui palju on metssigu, kuidas metssigade hulgas see levib. Ja on ka teatatud, millal on järgmine juhtum avastatud. Nii et tõesti, head, kvaliteetsed andmed. 2015. aastast ei ole epidemioloogilises olukorras mingit erilist muutust toimunud. Ka ei metssigade ega ka siis nende kodusigade osas. Ja oktoobris siis käesoleval kuul toimub teine workshop ja novembrikuus avaldatakse sellesisuline teine raport. Nüüd 11. oktoobril järgmisel nädalal juba parlamendis toimub meil epidemioloogilise analüüsi järgmine töötuba sigade Aafrika katku osas. Seal osaleb kindlasti paljude Euroopa Liidu liikmesriikide esindajaid, kindlasti tulevad Parmasse ka mõned inimesed, kes täna siin publiku hulgas istuvad, igal juhul on neile kutsed välja saadetud. Ja räägime sellest, mida me õppisime Aafrika sigade katku tungimisest Euroopasse ja mida me saaksime siis riskide vähendamiseks teaduspõhiselt soovitada tulevikuks. Ja nii nagu Bernhard ütles, EFSAs koostame me teadusraporteid ja anname selle põhjal nõu ja meie poliitikameetmeid ei otsusta. Seda teeb Brüssel, seda teevad liikmesriigid. Teine selle aasta raport, mis ilmub novembris 2017, puudutab deskriptiivset epidemioloogiat ja see räägib siis sellest, kuidas metssigade populatsiooni hulgas on levinud ja kui palju siis identifitseeritud seda haigust. Ja nüüd lähme minu presentatsiooni teise teema juurde. Midagi täiesti muud, see puudutab mesilaste tervist. Ja nüüd ma lähen jälle organisatsiooni struktuuri juurde, kus ma ka näitasin, kuidas koostööd tehakse meie andmete osakonda tulevad ju sisse andmed. Mesilaste osas ei tule andmed mitte ainult minu osakonda ja see töö on koordineeritud ka teadustöö osakonnaga. Te näete 7 EFSA osakonda on sellesse kaasatud ja tähtis on see, et me ei töötaks üksikuna, vaid et me teeksime seda holistlikult, sest see on holistlik lähenemine, on jätkusuutlik. Me alustasime juba 2015. aastal, selle projekti nimi on akronüümina Must Be Project ja seal pannakse kokku holistlikku lähenemist sellele, kuidas tegeleda mitmete stressoritega, mis tabavad mesilasi. Need võivad olla pestitsiidid, need võivad olla keskkonnamürgid, kõik muud stressorid, millega me siis arvestame holistliku lähenemise koostamisel. Kuidas tegeletakse? Jällegi kogume me kõrge kvaliteedilisi andmeid, mis on harmoneeritud ja standardiseeritud. Seda meil on väga vähe. Ja siis meil on vaja ka töövahendaid ja meetodeid. Kui puuduvad õiged lähenemised, siis tuleb need välja töötada. Ja me ei saa seda ise teha, vaid meil on tarvis, et oleks sellesse kaasatud ka huvitatud osapooled. Nii et andmed, meetodid, huvitatud osapooled. Ja nüüd, kuidas seda siis tehakse? Meil on siis töörühmad, kes selgitavad välja, milliseid andmeid on vaja, milliseid tõenduspõhised vajadused ja metodoloogiad kaasatakse. Nagu te teate, EFSA-s on 450 inimest tööl, aga kõike me ise teha ei saa ja väljaspool EFSA-t on tohutul hulgal teadmisi, nii et me suuname osa tööd ka meie organisatsioonist välja. Nii et me palume, et näiteks mudelite koostamine ja DEP-TOX mudelid näiteks, ehk siis toksiliste ainete leviku mudelite väljatöötamine ja nii edasi, ka standardiseeritud andmete kogumine maastikult ja nii edasi. Kogu selle asja kohta on meie veebileheküljel väga palju informatsiooni, ehk kõik need andmed tulevad väljaspool olevatest üksustest. Ja nüüd, et jõuda ka avalikkuse teadvusesse, siis on meil selline pühendatud mikrolehekülg, ehk siis viimastel aegadel on meil just mesilaste stressorite töötubasid, selleks, et holistlikku lähenemist kokku panna, korraldatud juunikuus. Ka Euroopa Parlamendi ees rääkisime sellest küsimustest, väga paljud parlamendi osad olid sellest puudutatud. Ja nüüd meil on ka järgmine samm kavas, see on mesilaste partnerlus. Sellepärast, et see küsimus puudutab kõiki, nii mesilaste pidajaid, põllumehi, tööstusettevõtteid, teadlasi. Meil on vaja jagada ka siis koguda andmeid. Andmed peavad olema kättesaadavad, töövahendid, andmebaasid, mudelid ja nii edasi. Kõik need instrumendid on kättesaadavad. Ja selle eesmärgiks on lõpuks kokku panna Euroopa Liidu bee partnership, mesilaste partnerlus. Praegu sel hetkel on EFSA koduleheküljel avatud selline lehekülg, kus on siis huvigruppide nominatsioonid või ka kaasamise lehekülg, kui te soovite saada kaasatud, teid huvitavad mesilased ja te tahate EFSA-ga koos üht suurt Euroopa Liidu küsimust lahendada, siis olge head. Abistage meid, abistage üksteist ja registreerige ennast osalejaks. Ja järgmine asi on ka midagi sellist, mis mulle meeldib. Nimelt see, et me mitte ainult ei hinda riske ja ei tee teadust, vaid ka vaatame, et see teave kommunikatsiooni läbi jõuaks avalikkusena ja on väga tähtis, et inimesed teaksid, kuidas me teeme, mida me teeme ja miks see oluline on. Ja see on ka järgmise presentatsiooni, Barbara presentatsiooni sissejuhatus. Sest vanasti oli ju niimoodi, et teavitamisega ei olnud kõik väga hästi, aga meie vaatevinklist on see oluline, nii et meil on kõik siis Twitterid ja Facebookid ja kõik muud infokanalid kasutusel teavitamiseks. See oli minu poolt kõik, tänan. Küsimused tulevad hiljem.
Thank you. Kas on küsimusi?
Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Et kui hetkel ei ole, siis minul on endal oleks üks küsimus Kuhjenile, et rääkisin, su ettekandes oli palju juttu probiootikumidest ja sa püüdsid meile selgeks teha, et seda on vähe uuritud, kuigi eestlane vist läheb poodi ja tihti valib piimatoote just sellise, kus on see bakter või mingi muu bakter, kus kasulik bakter, probiootiline bakter, et teistes jaoks on väga selge, et kui männimetsal minna, siis ta ongi kasulikas bakterite seltskonnas, et probiootikum Kohtumine juures, et kui palju seda uurima peab või mis siis peaks uurima, et tänaseks on loodud küll puhastusvahendeid, küll hügieenitooteid, küll toiduaineid kasulikke bakteritele ja püütud selgeks teha, et see on inimesele väga kasulik. Aga nagu ma mäletan, et sa ütlesid, et sa tuled seal keemiasektorist, et kas keemiasektor teeb äkki nii palju lobi, et probiootikumide loodusliku poole ei saa kuidagi oma õiguste ja sõnadega kaubale, et need toodetel saaks juurde kirjutada, et see on inimestele kasulik, kui mina olen saanud ise endale ühele probiootikumega tootele peale sõna elukeskkonna tervendaja, et ma ei saa küll kirjutada sinna, et inimeste tervise parandaja, aga elukeskkonna tervendajal on küll saanud. Ole hea.
Thank you. I don't know if I can talk about...
Ma ei tea, kas ma saan rääkida mingitest spetsiifilistest juhtumitest, mida te mainisite?
No, what's happening is...
Mis toimub on see,
it's a little bit in a way related to the question...
Et see on osaliselt seotud varasema küsimusega pestitsiidide kohta esitatud andmetega näiteks. Ja kas võtame vastu ainult kollaboratiivsete praktikate andmeid või mitte. Ma arvan, et Bernhard rääkis, et tahtis öelda, et ei võeta automaatselt kaasa neid pestitsiidide uuringuid, mis ei ole hea laboratoorse praktika põhjal tehtud, vaid võtame ka teisi uurimusi. Oluline on, et teadus selle taga oleks väga tugev. Eestis on väga head uurimused, näitavad huvitavaid trende. Eksperdid teevad väga häid uurimusi, aga neil ei ole piisavalt kaalu, nad ei ole piisavalt veenvad, neil ei ole piisavalt andmeid, näiteks pestitsiidide osas. Ei ole uuritud piisavalt loomi, et kindlalt väita veendumusega mingeid aine mürgist toimet või selle puudumist. Ja probiootikumidega ja teiste tervisetoodetega näeme sama asja. Et tootja väidab, et on tehtud uurimusi, aga need uurimused ei ole piisavalt kvaliteetsed, nad ei täida neid kriteeriume, et nende põhjal me ei saa arvestada, et need on piisavalt hea teadusega ja me ei saa nende põhjal teha seadusandlikke otsuseid. Isegi osad teadlased ei mõista seda väga hästi. Näiteks mõned teadlased viivad läbi uurimuse ja arvavad, et kuna neil on see uurimus, mis näitab mingeid trende, siis me peaksime automaatselt seda arvestama seda teaduslikku arvamust. Aga see ei toimi niimoodi. Regulatiivne teadus on midagi, mis on väga karmilt kontrollitud, protokollitud. See peab vastama väga karmidele nõuetele ja kõige kõrgemale võimalikule standardile ja näitama mõju olemasolu või selle puudumist. Ja seda näeme ka probiootikumide juures, et puudub see teaduslik täpsus ja kõike ei kirjeldata piisavalt täpselt, et saaksime olla veendunud, kuhu see väide, millele see kohaldub ja millele mitte. Seda väide peab olema käega katsutav, seda peab saama tõestada. See ei ole mingi lihtsalt üldine hea tunne, mida ei ole võimalik teaduslikult demonstreerida. Ja tuleb viia läbi väga rangetele nõuetele vastavaid teadusuuringuid, mis vastaksid väga täpsele protokollile muidu ja sellised uurimised, mis nendele ei vasta, neid me ei võta vastu, sest need ei tõesta, et probiootikumid on kasulikud näiteks.
Thank you. Üks küsimus, jah, palun.
Helen Peetsman, Eesti Maaülikooli mahekeskus. Et mul on küsimus pestitsiidide kohta, aga juba ka mesilaste puhul käis teema läbi, et mitmesed toimained ühes siis kompleksis ja kui toidu puhul räägime, siis oli ka esimeses ettekandes öeldud, et toidus on mitme erineva toimaine jäägid koos, aga piirnormid toiduaines sisalduva toimaine kohta on ainult ühe aine kohta. Et me sööme päevas sisse mitmeid erinevaid jääke ja normid siis ütlevad ainult ühe jäägi kohta palju võib olla. Et see on probleem ja millised on EFSA edasised sammud, et seda teemat lahendada, et millal hakatakse uurima ja kehtestama siis mitme erineva toimaine jääkide kohta piirnorme. Aitäh.
When will you conduct studies on that?
Yes. This is actually a requirement in the legislation that
nõue seadusandluses, et mürkainete jääkmeid tuleks hinnata eraldi, aga ka koos. Ühesõnaga, EFSA kirjeldab seda protsessi liikmesriikides, millega nad peaksid seda uurima ja millised peaksid olema need piirmäärad. Aga nüüd koostame ka juhiseid, kuidas hinnata erinevaid kemikaale. Meil on 2 programmi, üks on just pestitsiidide kohta, selle on koostanud hollandlased. Oleme praegu poolel teel, see on üks pikk töö mudeli väljatöötamiseks, kuidas kombineeritud mõju hinnata. Ja samas kõrgemal kontseptsioonilisel tasemel teaduskomisjonis töötame üldisema lähenemise kallal, kuidas hinnata ainete ühismõju. Seda me teeme praegu. Millal me suudame neid protokolle toota, mis oleksid siduvad, seda on veel liiga vara öelda. See on seotud sellega, mida ma just ütlesin enne, et kui te jõuate teatud tasemele, kus teadus on nii heal regulatiivsel tasemel, et saab seadusandlikke tekste välja anda, et sinnani on veel pikk töö minna. Tuleb kalibreerida ja tagada kõikide sidusrühmade nõusolek. Nii et palju tööd on veel teha.
Aitäh! Väga palju väga huvitavaid asju, mida küsida, aga küsin ikkagi glüfosaadi teemal. I switch now back to English with my question on glyphosate.
Glüfosiidi
Of course it should be partly addressed to Germany as the rapporteur.
Loomulikult peaks sellega tegelema Saksamaa, kes on raportööriik, aga EFSA peab ikkagi endale kõik on just patoinas siin kohas ja saab ka endale kõik au. Aga on olulised vahed selle, kuidas teie ja Saksamaa glüfosiite hindasite. Näiteks glüfosaate hindasite näiteks vähiuuringutes, vaadati neid. Ja mul on raske ette kujutada, miks need tulemused nii erinevad olid. Üks uuringuid, mis oli väga oluline vähiuuringute instituudile, oli lümfoomi uuring ja nagu ma aru saan, siis see oli üks neid uuringuid, mida ei peetud piisavalt heaks Saksamaal ega ka teie poolt. Palun, et te selgitaksite, miks see ei olnud piisavalt hea. mitte lihtsalt öelda, et see ei olnud hea, vaid selgitada, miks. Ja teine uurimus, mida ei võetud arvesse, oli üks uurimus, mida ei olnud veel tol hetkel avaldatud, oli rahvatervise uuring. See oli kestnud vähem kui 7 aastat, et kas see oli liiga lühikese kestusega, et hinnata kantserogeenide olemasolu näiteks. Ja siis oli vähiuuringute asutus rõhutas ka genotoksilisuse aspekti, mida teie ei pidanud tähtsaks. Me teame, et genotoksilisus on üks oluline kantserogeensuse külg. Palun selgitage, miks need olulised erinevused tekkisid. Ja muidugi ja juhtumite kontrollimise puhul ei vaadeldud ainult glüfosaate, aga genotoksilisuse uuringutes uuriti ainult glüfosaate. Aitäh, ma püüan. Ma arvan, et väga raske on siin nüüd individuaalsetest uurimustest rääkida, sest meil on umbes 700. Nii et kui te nüüd lähete non-Hodgkinsi uurimusi vaatama, siis on teine küsimus. Aga ma võib-olla toon välja peamised jooned, miks EFSA 27 liikmesriigi, USA, FDA ja näiteks Kanada, Jaapani, Uus-Meremaa, Austraalia, miks nende asutustel kõigil võivad tekkida erinevad arvamused. See ei ole ainult EFSA probleem, vaid see on maailma regulatoorsete asutuste probleem. Näiteks, kui meil oli pestitsiidide kohta koosolek, siis jõudsime samale järeldusele, et see tõenäoliselt ei ole kantserogeenne ja ei ole ka genotoksiline. Aga näiteks liikmesriikidest Rootsi oli teisel nõul ja kõik ülejäänud olid ühel nõul. Kuidas on võimalik, et vähki uuriv rahvusvaheline asutus jälle oli erineval arvamusel? Ma arvan, et erinevad tulemused tulid sellest, et nad vaatasid erinevaid andmekogumeid. Näiteks vähi uurimisasutus vaatas ainult avaldatud uuringuid ja nad on endale sellise poliitika kindlaks seadnud. Mina võrdleksin seda näiteks sellena, et inimene vaatab maastikku ja püüab mõista maastikku ja siis sulgeb ühe silma. Te näete siiski maastiku üldist mudelit, aga te ei näe seda tervikuna, sest te olete otsustanud mitte vaadata ühte väga olulist osa tõendusmaterjalist, sest lihtsalt mõnda uuringut ei ole veel avaldatud ja nad lihtsalt otsustasid mitte vaadata mitte avaldatud uuringuid. Aga EFSA vaatab ka mõnda mitte avaldatud uuringut ja see on meie meelest väga oluline. EFSA ja teised regulatiivsed asutused peavad vaatama infot väga erinevatest allikatest, akadeemiast, tööstusest ja nii edasi. Ja nüüd, kui minna individuaalsete uuringute juurde ja öelda, et siin, kui teete niimoodi ja võrdlete neid ja uurite suundi ja mina leian 8 ja teie 6, siis see ei ole, alati võib leida mingeid erinevusi, et mulle tundub, et sellel ei ole mõju, teine tunneb, et võib-olla sellel on mõju, et see ei ole küsimus ainult eksperthinnangus, vaid see on teine lähenemine tõendusmaterjalile. Ma ei taha öelda, et see on halb. Ma ei ütleks seda kunagi. Kolleegid ja mina ja kõik teevad suurepärast tööd. Aga osad lihtsalt on otsustanud kõrvale jätta väga tohutu kogumi informatsiooni, mis olemas on. Ja Euroopa regulatiivses raamistikus me peame vaatama ka seda informatsiooni. Minu meelest see on see peamine erinevus.
Nüüd ma annaks sõna EFSA kommunikatsiooni talituse juhatajale Barbara Kallanile, kes räägiks siis riskide teavitamisest ja kogu sellest teavituspoole pealt, millest võib-olla kõige rohkem eriarvamusi ja küsimusi tavaliselt tekkinud on.
Thank you very much, and I think it's going to be a nice quick wrap up of what...
Aitäh, ja ma arvan, et see on väga palju lühem ettekanne kui mu kolleegidel. Mina tegelen välissuhetega ja ka rahvusvahelise koostööga ja koostööga liikmesriikidega. Miks me suhtleme? Bernhard seletas väga selgelt, et me oleme selleks sunnitud seaduslikult. Hans ja Gmo rääkisid juba kõigist nendest valdkondadest, millega EFSA tegeleb. Teadus ei ole lõppenud enne, kui selle tulemused on edasi antud ja kõik peavad usaldama teadust, et selle põhjal saab tarku seadusi teha. Seda kaarti olete ka näinud. Me töötame teiste Euroopa asutustega riskianalüüsi alal ja kommunikatsiooni alal mitmes valdkonnas. Näiteks Kemikaaliametiga. Kemikaaliamet viis läbi ka glüfosaadi hindamise uuringu. Siis uurime hädaolukordi ja salmonella ja muud haiguste kohta. See oli haiguste ennetamise ja tõrje Euroopa Keskusega ja Keskkonnaagentuuriga mikroobide vastase vastupanu teemal. Üle maailma on meil koostööpartnereid ja ka riigiasutusi üle maailma. Meil on väga aktiivne kaugkoosolekute süsteem. Läbi meie ülemaailmse maailma suudame välja töötada harmoniseeritud riskianalüüsi metodoloogiat ja jagame andmebaase ja anname edasi oma mudeleid. Teeme palju tööd ka, oleme teinud minevikus ja jätkame arenevate riikidega, et töötada välja võimekusi. Samuti töötame Euroopa naaberriikidega, kellel on probleemid, näiteks loomataudide levik, et me saaksime neile üheskoos need kontrolli alla saada. Meie sidusrühmad laiemalt on tarbijaühingud, siis talunikud, restoranid, toidutööstus, akadeemia, arstide organisatsioonid ja MTÜ-d. Kõik, kes on huvitatud meie tööst ja Euroopa tööst, töötame sidusrühmade foorumi kaudu ja töörühmade kaudu korraldame ümarlaudu ja püüame kaasata võimalikult palju huvitatud sidusrühmi ka avalike konsultatsiooni kaudu. Nii riskide kommunikatsiooni osas peamine väljakutse on see, et meil on 500 000 toidueksperti Euroopas ja igaüks armastab toitu, kõik teab toitu, kõik arvab, et tema on ekspert ja paljud inimesed ka tõesti on eksperdid. Aga neil on võib-olla huvi mingi teatud toidu tootmise ühe valdkonna või mingi ühe koostisaine suhtes. See teeb meie töö palju keerulisemaks kui mõne teises valdkonnas asutuse töö, kus inimesed ei pea ennast eksperdiks. Teine probleem on see, et peame tagasi minema riskihalduse ja riskianalüüsi vastandamise juurde ja selle juurde, et riskkommunikatsioon on seal kuskil vahepeal. Riskianalüüsis meile antakse mandaat hinnata võimalikke riske, näiteks mingi saasteaine riske. Ja meie anname vastuse. ja näiteks kui ütleme, et jah, risk on olemas, siis ei ole mingit viivitamatult kohe astutavat sammu selle riski eemaldamiseks, vaid me anname enda info edasi liikmesriikidele, Euroopa Parlamendile, nõukogule ja riskihalduse protsessi peavad nemad omavahel kokku leppima. Nii et tarbijad, kes kuulevad sellest riskist, siis nad tunnevad ennast haavatavalt, sest ei ole veel mingisugust protsessi selle haldamiseks. Nii et me peame leidma võimaluse, et reguleerijad, poliitikategijad vähendaksid seda aega. Meie publik, kui me riskist teavitame, on liikmesriikide asutused, poliitikakujundajad, teaduskogukond, kes kõigepealt meie tööle enda sisendi annab ja kes on ka tulemusest huvitatud, siis partnerid, näiteks teiste riikide asutused, aga ka meedia, sidusrühmad ja inimesed, keda see üldiselt puudutab. Ja me ka alati püüame leida, et kus võiks olla huvi, näiteks GMO-de, pestitsiidide alal. Ja me võiksime koostöös enda teadlastega välja töötada vastused sageli esitatavatele küsimustele. Juriidiline kohustus meie tööst teavitamisel. Me võiksime ainult öelda, et absoluutselt kõik, mis me teeme, avaldatakse meie teadusajakirjas. EFSA ajakirjas sisaldub kogu meie toodang. Näiteks on seal ka mõnede suurte konverentside protokollid. Aga me ei piira ennast ainult teadusandmete edasi kommunikeerimisega, vaid anname edasi ka väga keeruliste teaduslike analüüside kokkuvõtted edasi. Aga mis nüüd puudutab kodanike teavitamisesse, siis lähme veel kaugemale ja töötame välja materjale, paneme need enda leheküljele või avaldame ka mujal sotsiaalmeedias. Seal meil on selgekeelsed kokkuvõtted, uudislood, mis võtavad kokku teadustöö viisil, mis puudutab ja mis on selgem mitteteadlastele. Meil on mitu kanalit, mille kaudu me kommunikeerime, kasutame ka videosid, infograafikat, animatsiooni ja koos meie teadlastega teeme tööd, et mitte liiga üle lihtsustada teadustekste ja et ka teadlased ikkagi tunneksid enda töö sealt ära. Ma ei tea, kui palju teist tunnevad meie EFSA journali ajakirja, aga seal püüame leida viisi, kuidas võib-olla kaasata rohkem meie analüütikuid, et uurida, millised on suundumised ja mis inimesi huvitab. Sotsiaalmeedias otsustasime keskenduda Twitterile, YouTube'ile, LinkedInile. LinkedIn on akadeemikute ekspertide kogukond. YouTube'is seda kasutame päris palju. Meil on seal tõsiseid teadusvideoid näiteks ja Twitterit otsustasime eelistada Facebookile, sest ressursid olid piiratud ja seal on ka meie jälgijad. Ja realistlikumalt võiksime Facebooki kohalolekut. Facebookist tuleb lihtsalt sisu kogu aeg uuendada. Oleme katsetanud ka andmete visualiseerimisega. Teadusosakonna kolleegid on teinud väga keerulisi pikki uuringuid, sama ka antimikrobiaalse vastupanuvõime kohta. Aga kui me muudame selle teadustööd visualiseerimise kaudu kättesaadavaks, siis need on ka arusaadavamad seal. Kasutame animatsiooni, et selgitada uuringuid, näiteks ühte uuringut, mis avaldati selle aasta alguses. Võite klikkida erinevatel võimalustel ja leida kokkuvõtted näiteks meetodite kohta, kuidas mingi antimikrobiaalne vastupanu süsteem on mingis riigis toiminud. Ja sama kampaania raames jätkame Euroopa antibiootikumide teadlikkuse päeva projekti. Ja see on erinev publik kui andmete visualiseerimise osas, et see on mõeldud just parlamendiliikmetele ja otsuste tegijatele Brüsselis näiteks, et kaasata neid sellesse teadlikkuse kampaaniasse. Sel aastal tekkis üks teema ka, et pidime rahvale selgitama keemiliste toidukõnede sari ja näiteks oleme rääkinud loomadel testimisest. Võite leida neid, seal on välja toodud need ained, mis on lingitud mujale ja info nende teadlaste kohta, kes töötavad nendega. Nii et kõik info on teie sõrmeotsas. Püüdsime selgitada seda läbi video, selgitava teadusvideo. Ühesõnaga me tegime kättesaadavaks info, mida saab kasutada mudelites ja mida saaks sisse sööta uutesse mudelitesse ja see aitaks testimiste hulka viia vajalikule tasemele. Ja see on uus viis midagi selgitada, mis muidu oleks olnud väga kuiv. Pole kommunikatsiooni ilma võrgustiketa. Eelmisel nädalal olin Tallinnas koos meie kommunikatsiooniekspertide võrgustikuga. See on üks meie tehniline võrgustik, mis kohtub regulaarselt, et vahetada parimate tavade kohta infot. Mõned kohtumised sel aastal on olnud väga olulised tarbijatele, näiteks telefonikonverents tiinete loomade tapmise teemal, mis on väga delikaatne teema mitmes riigis. Töötasime mitmete riikidega, mida mõjutasid hepatiit B leiud sealihas ja hepatiit D ja rääkisime, kuidas see ei ole seotud Euroopas ringi reisimisega, vaid töötlemata sealiha tarbimisega. Sest see on midagi, mis on tarbijatele väga hirmutav, aga meie teavitame neid terviseohtude kohta ja võib-olla loodetavasti ka natuke kaotasime neid hirme. Augustis vahetasime palju infot kolleegidega liikmesriikides munade kohta, et ka teavitada tarbijaid. See oli nüüd lühike ülevaade materjalide kohta ja võrgustike kohta, mis meil on. Ja ma hea meelega võtan küsimusi.
Aitäh! Kas on kellelgi küsimusi? Ja palun. Tagata.
Einar Eiland, Elukeskkonna ja Rahvastiku Arengu Selts. Et ma küsiksin niiviisi, et vaadake, te tegelete ju informatsiooni nagu sünteesimisega ja nii edasi. Et kas te olete jõudnud nagu sinnamaale ka, et milline võiks olla kaasaegsele infoühiskonnale sobiv ühiskonnamudel üldse nendest erinevatest uuringutest siis tulenevalt, mis võimaldaks neid toidujulgeoleku riske siis maandada ka äkki? Küsime seda pidi. Tänud.
Kui saan küsimusest õigesti aru saada. Ma arvan, et mis me leiame on see, et ei ole ühte õiget lahendust kommunikatsiooniks. Sest nagu ühel slaidil nägite, siis meil on ka väga erinev sihtrühm. Me ei saa näiteks võrrelda ka mõne valdkonna huvi suurust näiteks mingi teise valdkonna suhtes tuntava huvi suurusega. Meie strateegia on olla nii avatud kui võimalik ja selgitada erinevate kanalite olemasolu ja tõesti kasutada erinevat tüüpi arenguid ja kanaleid, kuhu inimesed võiksid minna infot vaatama.
Ei näe rohkem küsimusi. Ma tahan kõigepealt tänada kõiki ettekandjaid. Ettekanded olid väga sisukad. Ma usun, et kõik, kes täna siia saali tulid, said väga paljudele enne siia tulekut olnud küsimustele vastuse ja tänu sellele võib-olla ka saalist küsimusi oli vähem. Aga kindlasti jäi õhku mitmed teemad ja mitmed küsimused, millele päris selgeid vastused ei saanud. Algame siis ülikooli küsimustest, et maaülikoolilt, et millal hakatakse ikka uurima seda, et kuidas erinevad kemikaalid koos mõjuvad või mitte või kuidas siis uurimine ja mis tulemusena või kelle otsusega siis lõpuks öeldakse, et kas meil on südamejuust või ma ei tea, helluse bakter või midagi muud, just see, mis meie inimese tervist parandavad, eks kergem küsida ja väga raske on küsimustel vastata, sest kõik ettevõtjad püüavad ju midagi oma tootesse uut panna ja püüda selle tootega tulla turule just, et see on see meil kõige parem ja kui EFSA poolt tuleb vastus, et midagi on tegemata, siis nii nagu mul üks kolleeg alati ütleb, et küll need keemiatööstuse omad teevad oma lobil paremini kui meie suudame teha. Ma loodan, et siin laua taga tüdrukud ja poisid, nagu EFSA ametnikud on sirgeseljalised ja püüavad ausalt seda teed käia. See ei ole lihtne. Et ma isiklikult ei tahaks teie nahas olla. Sest ükskõik, mis otsused te teete, kellelgi on see hea ja kellelgi on see halb. Kõik kindlasti ei plaksuta. Aga ma veel kord tänan eesotsas EFSA peadirektorit, et leidsite aega Eestisse tulla. Ma tänan kõiki, kes täna üritusest osa võtsite. Saal on üllatavalt palju rahvast täis. Tähendab, et see teema pakub paljudele huvi ja kindlasti ei lõppe see teema siin laua taga, vaid teema läheb edasi ja Maaeluministeeriumi poole pealt Toomas ja tema meeskond kindlasti püüab kõik teha selleks, et see informatsioon jõuaks meie tootjate ja tarbijate juurde. Ja ma usun, et kui tarbijatele meil on ainult üks soov, et kui me poodi lähme, me teame, mida me ostame, mida me tarbime ja põllumehed teavad, et mida nad oma loomadel sisse suudavad, et see toit oleks farmers have to know what they feed the animals and to keep them healthy. We need to keep the bees alive. So we all have problems, but I believe that some problems have been solved and some will be solved in the future. Again, thank you everyone. Have a nice evening.